Hi, and welcome to our RELEX Talks, where on the second Wednesday of the month, we'll cover a variety of topics that we hope inspire, inform, and give you insight. So this is basically your VIP access to the hottest topics in retail, supply chain, and beyond, I would say. I'm Tor Tigerstedt. I'm your host for the day, and I work at RELEX Solutions, looking after the store operations strategy. Today, our topic is very close to my heart because it is about in-store operations, funnily enough. So the in-store experience for shoppers is hugely important, as all of you will know out there. As summed up by a recent Gartner survey that found that customer experience drives actually 66% of customer loyalty when making it more influential than price or a brand name. So really driving the shoppers to where they want to go. But it can also be costly to get it right. Labor is, of course, one of the large costs. And a recent survey found that in the 10 largest US grocers, currently 14% of sales is the cost of labor as well. So how do you balance the two? How do you get the right customer experience, but also balance your cost and your efficiency? Well, I have pretty much spent my entire career looking at this balance and in-store operations, about how to drive efficiency in the processes, yet give the right customer experience and invest in where it's needed so that you can future-proof your operation and ultimately focus your people on the right things. Now, a big element to that as well is how technology help. And to help me explore this balance between customer experience, efficiency, cost, and how technology can support, thankfully, you won't only have to listen to me. I am joined by Stan Zylowski today, who's the founder of Movista. Welcome, Stan.
Hi, Tor. Good morning. Well, good morning here.
Yeah,
in the States, anyway. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me, Stan. So just to start off, would you want to do a quick introduction of yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. So I grew up in the retail space, literally starting my career slinging cases, did a lot of field work with brand teams, running field teams, eventually ran the account for the business here in Bentonville. We're based in Bentonville. Movista is based in Bentonville. And so in 2010, we started Movista and created a platform that allowed those field organizations out executing in retail and folks operating inside stores to do so, to your point, hopefully with great efficiency and not just with an eye towards what that feels and looks like for the company, but also for the worker themselves, not just for the centralized organization. So happy to be here this morning. Thank you.
Brilliant. And I'm hoping to really dig into that experience you got there, Stan, as well. So excellent. Well, why don't we start from the very top, right? So we're talking about in-store execution. We're talking about that experience that customers have, but also all the work that goes on. So, if we really boil it down, in-store execution, what is it and why is it important in your view?
Yeah. So I use the general term, in-store execution is all about executing the vision.
Yeah.
So companies spend a tremendous amount of resources trying to design that store for the perfect shopping experience. And it starts at the front door. It starts in the parking lot. It goes all the way through the store. It's all the elements that we know about, right? So then you can break down from there. You can say in-store execution is about one, setting the stage, right? So do we have the right marketing materials? Are we properly displayed? Do we have in general, the execution of the plan at that level? And then importantly for our discussion today, I think is the right product in the right place at the right time? Are we in stock? Is there a tag? Are we properly assorted to planogram, which is really important. We'll dig into that more later. But so in-store execution is the place where the labor executes the vision that has come down on high, and many times, of course, gets impacted locally as well, depending on the retailer. What do you think retail execution is?
well, Thanks for asking here as well. I should be asking the questions. No, I agree with much of what you've said. I think for me, throughout my career of looking at the process, it starts with a plan somewhere. And you alluded to this as well, that everything should happen for a reason. And yes, there is everyday life of customers coming in, of events happening around you that you cannot plan for and you need to deal with at the time. However, this beginning of it should always be about executing a plan to the specifications that it has been laid out, because there's a reason for the plan. Now, the elements that sit around that in terms of how do you do it well, what support have you got? You can go from training, you can go to IT, you can go to all the hardware that's even in a shop, right? Everything needs to be looked after and be functioning well. I still come back to, as long as you're starting to plan with looking at what needs to be done, when does it need to be done, and who can do it, you have a good start about what the execution element of a store should be looking like. But again, more complex, right? Because we add more and more things to the environment.
Sure. I mean, people ask, Tor, you said something interesting. You said, the last thing you said, I think, is extremely interesting in today's environment, which is the who is going to do it part, right?
Yeah.
So people ask me, on airplanes or wherever, when I'm about family reunions, it takes a while. They say, like, well, yeah, but what do you do? But what do you do, right? And I always use the example. I say, if you walk into a grocery store or a mass store, and there's an end cap of baked beans, okay,
Yeah,
or green beans. I'm thinking of international items here. Green beans. Who built that display? And invariably, they're going to say they say the store.
yeah.
I said, well, maybe, or maybe the company that makes the green beans built that display, or maybe a whole other third-party organization did it on behalf of either the retailer or, so the point is, part of the complexity that these systems have to consider now, and part of the complexity of running retail at all, is that over time there's been in food and mass, a greater dependency on third-party labor inside the stores, or vendor-supported labor inside the stores,
Yeah.
which is a blessing. It's a blessing and a curse, right? But it's just one more factor, which we could talk about many things that complicate. So even the basic question of who will be executing the task, right? To whom should we assign this, is an interesting one in itself.
And something that retailers have to consider right from the very beginning, right? Because, I mean, you can think of your store, but you have to consider, like you say, every piece of labor, every piece of item that you have in the store, and it could come from many different parts. So when we look at this, right? So one of the things that I've heard quite a lot lately, and I'm seeing as well, and you can tell me whether you see the same, but we're seeing the investment in kind of IT and in should I call it process engineering for stores. We've seen that increase, right? It's on the up. Thank you for nodding. I'll take that as you agree with what you're seeing as well. But we see solutions around it's any number of things around category management, around tasking, around scheduling, replenishment, and et cetera, picking. Everything that comes with omni-channel that's going on, everything like that. So we're seeing the investment increase. Why do you think that is, or has it been always a steady trend in your view?
Well, I think it's been a steady trend that technology investment has increased, because it's been a steady trend that technology has been present, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't about Movista. It's just, but it's a good marker. When we launched in 2010, the iPhone 3G was the only smart device on the market. And really, until 15 or 16, most CTOs didn't trust smart devices yet. And they maybe shouldn't have, by the way, if security wasn't then, what it is now. But but the big picture, coming out to 10,000 feet and looking down, right, is that while we have invested more and more in the toolbox, the complexity of operating at scale has increased even more. So, you alluded to it, but think of the drags on a major operation. Again, we're talking food, drug, mass now, where you guys are on the RELEX side of the chain. You're forecasting replenishment at the aggregate level, which isn't easy. But when you get down to the store and you recognize the fact that you have personal shoppers hitting stores in ways that consumers wouldn't have, knocking down inventories more rapidly in weird patterns, recognizing and understanding those patterns and restocking those shelves, that's all new stuff. And certain retailers use their stores. Of course, you have BOPA, so you have buy online, pick up in store. Some you're doing delivery. So bottom line is, although there's been tremendous investment, there's also been an insane increase in the complexity of running stores. And I think the fact that we cannot close or have not yet closed fully the gap of on-shelf availability indicates that the technology is good and getting better, and it needs to, because the complexity continues to give it trouble.
Yeah, no, it's good insight. Thank you for sharing. And I think the other element for me that always comes into this is that we are still dealing with people, right, at the front line. You are still asking someone to do a lot of different things, and that is, talking what we referred to at the beginning around, there's a plan and what you're setting out to do, but there's everything that hits you as you're going, right? I mean, we all need customers and we love them, but at the same time, they make it much more complex when you're in the in-store with the questions, moving things around, having things in baskets, all that element that goes. And I think the other thing that I've seen, and I'm pleased I've seen more focus on, is the complexity getting more, but how do you make it simpler, right? For that person on the front line to actually do that.
So the great, by the way, you made me think of one of my favorite quotes. The great American philosopher Mike Tyson once said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." Right. So, no, I think this is an important thing to discuss for a moment. Simple, clear, and linear is what the user experience needs to be.
Yeah.
In the store and on the shelf. That's what that needs to be. There is nothing simple about the way that the back end systems need to be working together to deliver the right content, communications, and direction to that individual, right? So that's the art of this. You haven't, sort of touched the third rail yet as far as technology goes, but I'll throw it out there. One of the big challenges that has existed is that the planning cycle, the literal store planning, the category management, the F&R, where you guys grew up. I know you're expanding there, right? The in-store execution parts of this process, and then even the logistical parts, et cetera, they have been over time individual pillars, individual technologies, individual pillars. And where we see people making the most headway is where they are integrating these systems, or in an ideal state, have a single, larger platform that integrates all of these steps. I'll be brief, but I'll be specific. You can draw all the planograms you want based upon the feedback signal of the last planogram that you sent out. However, if that shelf was never built that way to begin with, if it never was set correctly to that planogram, then the cycle's broken, because you're making assumptions about the next planogram based on something that never happened, right? So there's a lot in here, but how do you know what happened at shelf? You have to have in-store tech, and it needs to be tightly seamed back to that other, to your other process. So, and it's all here, Tor, it's all happening. It's all happening. It's all the way back to the 60s. It's all happening now, where this combination of AI, industry learnings over time. There are a lot of things, a lot of knowns that we can put into here, but the connectivity is key.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like as we introduce technology to make it simpler, we add complexity in terms of how you make it all work together and how the data flows so you get the right views. Good insight, Stan. Good insight. Now, let's dive down a little bit here, right? Because one thing I'm very much seeing, and it's kind of backed up by recent studies, for example, by FMI, that says 41% of grocery retailers' sales are from the fresh category. Now, I know this is one of your favorites, Stan. There was another Deloitte, to throw another stat out there, there was a Deloitte survey as well of kind of the top retail executives in grocery, and 64% saw that the produce section, so we're looking at fresh here again, was considered to be the most strategically important department over the next 1 to 3 years. I personally, I agree, right? In terms of, as you walk in, as you see the grocery, where do you want to go as a shopper, right? You can get enticed, you can see it. Coming back to that the importance of the customer experience. However, I mean, certainly through my career anyway, it's always been one of the most challenging departments to get right. So, let's start right at the kind of top on when we look at fresh and produce and loose fruit and veg and stuff. Why is it so complex? Why is it so hard?
Well, so let's go back to my story about the end cap of green beans. Okay, if a buyer buys a feature of green beans, and at the end of that feature, the end cap gets sold down. So you've still got 4 extra cases in stock now.
Yeah.
Well, you better hurry up and sell them, because in about 7 years they're going to go bad, right? Like, it's just like, it's a very manageable. Of course, you don't want to carry too much inventory. I get all of that, but at the same time, the reality is that the number of ways that a product can go out of stock, and actually will go out of stock in a produce section, or there's other spaces in the store, right? I mean, so you're dealing with markdowns, you're dealing with real-time quality issues that can occur, spoilage, coloration. I mean, there's a million reasons product can go out of stock. And so, 2 things about produce. One, it is an intense task to maintain your produce area from a human standpoint, right? It's just physically more work to stack the product a certain way and have it look great and ensure it's fresh and all those things. 2, it's the aging of the product, and how traditionally the aging of the product is blind to the replenishment systems upstream. And that's just the reality. So that's been the challenge in fresh. It is a different animal. And the one thing I'll say is in our experience, and our ethos is this: you can do F&R well for center store without a ton of store feedback. But if you really want to do fresh well, and that includes all of, sort of the store boundary, you are going at time to need feedback from those stores. You're going to need to understand that of these 6 in-stock bags of lettuce that are showing we're going to sell 2 today or 3 today or whatever, I have 3 others that are going to age out at midnight. So my shipment needs to be impacted by that. Else I'm going to run out of product, right? So I hope that's, so I would boil it down. There's a lot of words. It's intense from a labor perspective, and it moves quickly, and things change rapidly. And traditionally, the right that hasn't been available to the systems upstream to ensure we stay in stock.
Yeah, and that's an important part, isn't it? That you have almost the 2 elements here when we're talking about in-store execution as well, and we've referenced it several points already. Interestingly, without kind of calling it out, which is we're talking about the actual execution of the task, right? And how do you make that efficient? How do you make it user friendly? How do you make sure you equip your colleagues on the front line in the right way to do the job? But then there's the feedback loop, right? It's that data stream. It's that, okay, great, we have done it. Well, first of all, have we done it? I guess is even the first kind of data point. But actually, how did it go? What are we missing? What are the things that you cannot just pick up from, anything being scanned through a till, for example. And I think that's another thing where retailers really have to think at a higher level about how you combine it, and how do you ensure that when you're looking at one part of it, so how do I help my in-store colleagues do their work better, that you don't forget about the other part of it, right? The other side of the coin, which is, and how does that then help me plan upstream?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's something that is always good to keep front of mind for when you CTOs and CIOs are kind of looking across their IT landscape for stores.
Well, since everybody woke up and hopped on this call this morning, I want to throw something else out. Just it's a little more exciting. We've been very practical. There's as we talk about what you were just saying now, in companies like RELEX and obviously we're leaning in here too. The system should tell us when there's an anomaly. We've been doing that for years with data. Okay, now we have to do it faster than we've ever done it before. But in an ideal state, the system's going to recognize that there's an anomaly in the data. Something's up. Something happened where in stocks went the wrong direction, and because and sales went a different direction.
Yeah.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so the real trick here is to you keep saying simple to exercise and store, and there's a certain simplicity to produce or fresh, right? Like every day, I think all of us are involved in retail at scale. Every day, a person or people are going to go through, they should be going through, and they're going to pull out of date product in fresh, and they're going to rotate stock in fresh.
Yeah.
And that's like the core what they need to be doing. Where when it gets great is when the systems are recognizing anomalies upstream, and they're asking someone to give them the data they need to heal the system. So I know based on a sales pattern yesterday, vis-a-vis the versus the in stock, I don't know something's wrong. There's something I don't get, right, as a system. And so now I'm asking and driving an action, and that action is simple and it's quick, but it is incredibly informative to heal the system. And that's sort of what the process is. It's continuous self-healing. And as you go through that process, you'll be able to better anticipate the anomalies in the future, driven by what. So it's not just important that we ask people to do stuff. Sometimes we need to ask them what happened. Why did that happen? So the system killer, right? So that is what would fall into the category for some people of AI. I'm not sure I would throw it there, but it's fine. Whatever term you want to use, it's system assisted, right? Activities. And the difference here is I'm juxtaposing this to Joe, who's been working here, or Mary, who's been working here for 12 and a half years, is like running this thing all day, every day. And there's a beauty to that, but it's almost impossible to do at scale.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're always going to have Joes and Marys that have been here for 12 years. And that's one of the other tricks too. If you all who are running stores or running teams, like you have to have products that work for both Joe and Mary, who've been around for 12 years, and Tabitha, who started last Tuesday. Right. Yeah. And that's a complexity in and of itself as well.
Yeah, hugely. So, so Stan, let's put you on the spot then, right? So we've talked about kind of in-store executions at kind of at a higher level. We talked about produce and the challenges we've seen there, and some of the important things that we need to look at, and some of the solution set as well. But I put you in charge, right now. You'd love this. Put you in charge of a grocery retailer, right? A few hundred stores. Where would you focus your efforts and your investment? What is it you would go after then, considering all the complexities, considering we see the market becoming more kind of bringing more things into store around the omni-channel experience, so on and so forth? Where would you really focus?
Yeah, well, first off, I think, and I have nothing, I'm not affiliated with them other than being a member and then going to their events, but like FMI is awesome. So if you're not, if you're into fresh and you're not been attending those events, in my opinion, they're amazing. I have not affiliated with them. But I think, look, from the conversation today, if you're building we're talking grocery now, very specifically, or mass, you have to start in the boundary of the store in terms of where you're going to invest. And if you think about that, it's not that hard to understand why that matters so much. it matters that much because it's almost impossible to differentiate yourself a lot in center store, unless you want to go way to the edges and go, a fully organic or something like that, right? I mean, a container of ketchup is a container of ketchup, right? So I would invest there. But I do want to say, as far as product goes, if you look at what some retailers have done to take control of the inflow of third party and vendor labor in and out of their stores, and creating a platform that allows them to communicate and collaborate as they go, I would make a big focus there. And the reason I would make a big focus there is because at the end of the day, we got to have the right people. You said this all the way back to the beginning, the right people in the right seats to make the store work. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would focus on how I manage that. I would focus on fresh. And then from a technology perspective, that's a big question, by the way. But from a technology perspective, I would set about finding a contiguous thread. How could I put together a contiguous thread, as I said earlier in the call, that connects my store planning, my category management, F&R, in-store activity and execution? What's the way you do that? How do we have a single connected solution? Because as the technology evolves, the fact that you're single platformed across a large swath of shelf management is going to allow you to lay over those new fresh technologies a lot better and faster than if you're disintegrated or not integrated across that spectrum. So 3 things again, summarizing. I'd absolutely focus on the store boundary. That includes meat too, by the way, but fresh meat. I would ensure that I understood exactly who was going in and out of my store every day, what they were doing, and be able to manage that as just as much as I could manage Bill and Tommy who work for me.
Yeah.
And I would work to do that on a single platform that's fully integrated across the store.
Okay.
Those would be, those are 3 answers I would throw at you. I should have to do a lot more than that if you put me in charge. I don't think that's forthcoming though.
I'll review your application, Stan, and get back to you in a couple of weeks on how you did on your job interview. No, thank you, Stan. That's incredibly insightful. So we're coming to the end actually already, which has gone incredibly quickly. But I want to thank you, Stan, for joining me here today and for all the insight you've given me. I think it's been great to walk through what are we looking at in-store execution. And I think the main things to pull out there was around how the plans come into reality, but acknowledging the complexity of what real life throws at you when you're in a store. There's the technology to marry up with the people. Remember that at the end of the day, we rely upon the people in store to not only execute the plans. So how do we support them? How do we support them best? And how do we give them to them? And what we talked about there was about giving them the right visibility, about giving them the right user experience. And then we dived a little bit more into obviously fresh, which is complex, and we have less data. And there really I want to pull out what you talked about in terms of how do you get that feedback loop? How do you not only think about the execution, but also how you can utilize the insight from the front lines on that first side as well. So that's been great. Thank you, Stan, once again for joining me. I also want to ensure from an audience perspective, you can find more on Movista website, on the RELEX website as well, to see more around the solutions that our 2 companies offer. Don't forget, as I touched upon in the beginning, RELEX Talks, is a monthly, every second Wednesday event, where hopefully you'll get lots of insights. And we'll hope to inspire and share information of what we're seeing in the market, and talking about the real challenges facing retailers today. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thanks, Tor.